But also, Sean, I got to tell you, game ends, right? Do the podcast, go back to the hotel, starving. Nothing is open, strangely. DoorDash Taco Bell, and at that point, I am really feeling sick. I ate like a third of what I ordered. I left the rest of it behind because I just felt so gross.
Nick,
and then
the second time where you've ordered Taco Bell and just left it there.
I ate the rest of that in the following days. This time I did
the
not.
last time I visited you in Cleveland. I get Taco Bell, and Nick's like, that's not enough. Need
You
to order more.
one thing each.
I was
You're
like,
gonna DoorDash. You got to go
all right,
ball
man.
out.
So I ordered DoorDash again. This time it took like another hour. I'm falling asleep on the couch. Finally gets here. Finally eat it. Doesn't eat a thing. He's asleep upstairs.
Nah. There were other things to attend to.
And speaking of getting the party started.
For the victory lap, though. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I stress overcome, what for? Train in the trees, please pardon my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands, and stormy shore seasons in the year, yeah. Switch gears, we're keeping haters in the rear. At the blood, sweat, and tears, and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. 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 And today, we break through.
Every time. Every freaking time I try to do this, and every time, Sean, that happens. Oh, wait, hold on. I forgot I muted you. There you go.
Episode 63 of the Gridiron Podcast, off to a rip-roaring start. Our intro doesn't work. Nick doesn't know how to work the mic control. He's muting me. This is episode 63 of the Gridiron Podcast, and if you're new here, we call ourselves the Gridiron Podcast because we are half grid, half iron. We're part Formula One, part NFL. That's what we talk about each and every week here on the Gridiron Podcast. As always, I'm your maitre d', your MC of the evening, Sean Barie, and joining me as always, holding down the fort in the land, NFL.com talent writer, Nick Shook, as he flex.
Get a little flex in. Get a little flex in.
There we go, buddy.
Yeah. The picture's a little tight. Not as tight as it is if Katie's here, which Katie, by the way, is not with us tonight.
Exactly. Our third host, our Canadian queen, as we call her, Katie Caldwell, up in British Columbia. She is not joining us tonight because she cannot face the music after Team USA beat Canada in the Four Nations face-off on Saturday night. Championship game coming up on Thursday. What the F is a kilometer?
I'm just happy that, I don't know. Hockey's cool. I watch hockey. I was like, oh, hooray, America. Oh, this is actually a really entertaining game. But beyond that, you guys were talking strategy and stuff, and I was just like, I sent you that video. I know some of these words.
Yes.
Good burger.
Well, Katie is Canadian, obviously, so hockey is kind of in her blood, and I grew up watching hockey. That was my first love. So Katie and I can actually talk, in-depth hockey about the players and this and that. And Nick's just like, I'm happy to be here. I hope both teams have fun. Yeah. Also play Freebird. So this is episode 63. We are coming off the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Super Bowl was, 2 weeks ago now, last week?
Yeah, it's a little bit old news, but because we didn't have a show last week, I'm going to try my best to muffle my coughs, but I still got the lingering effects of the New Orleans flu.
I was going to say, Nick was obviously at the Super Bowl covering it for the NFL. We were supposed to have an episode after the Super Bowl, but Nick got the ick in New Orleans.
Yeah,
Nick got the ick.
Hell
Nick
of a
got
week.
Ick.
Great time. And the thing is, Sean, as you know, Miami, we tore that city down, right? I've been known to get after it sometimes on these trips and still obviously work at a high level, but I didn't even get after it. I slept well. I was a mature adult. I got to bed on time. I got up on time. I got workouts in.
There was no Jimmy Johnning?
No, I still got sick. I didn't even go to the Maxim party Saturday night. I didn't even go to a party. I just went down to Bourbon Street. And I wasn't even out there that long. I was in bed by midnight. And I got up at 9, worked out, and yet somehow I still caught the flu. It hit me in the late third quarter of the game, and I was like, uh-oh. I don't feel great. Luckily, this is a blowout. I'm almost done with my writing. Post-game, I'm downstairs. I'm in the Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni press conference, and I'm stifling coughs. Just don't let anybody know that you're coughing right now, that you're all stuffed up. It was a rough. And then I had to go do an hour NFL Daily podcast afterward. Managed to fight through it. But yeah, because of that, that's why we didn't have a show last week. I was feeling awful. I feel great now. I just don't sound. I mean, my voice is fine, but I'm still congested and coughing. So we're fighting through it here.
To kind of give the backstory, Nick and I, we covered our first Super Bowl together. We met in college. That's where the friendship started. And then by chance, we actually covered our very first Super Bowls together. I worked at a TV station in Fort Myers, Florida. Of course, Nick for the NFL, and we met in Miami for Super Bowl 54. Went to the Maxim Super Bowl party. We were, I don't know what time we even got home.
Something?
Yeah. I think I got back to my hotel room, which was in like Fort Lauderdale for some reason at like 8 a.m. And I walked in.
Yeah, because you crashed on the couch.
Yeah, I walked in and I asked the guys from my station, I'm like, hey, what time is checkout? They're like 11. I'm like, great, wake me up at 10:45. I was like, I'll be ready. I think the lingering effects of the night before started to wear off during my 6 o'clock live hit that day. And I'm thinking, everyone... There's thousands of media members at the Super Bowl, thousands. At least half of them have to be in like worse shape than me. Like, there's no way I'm like the worst one here.
I don't know,
At least
man.
half of them. I don't know how people cover the Super Bowl because people get after it, man.
I don't know, man. I don't know how many people were at that Maxim party seeing Rick Ross do a full set at 1:30 in the morning and losing their minds over seeing G-Eazy walk by. I don't know how many of them were that
man,
lucky.
Be cool, but there's G-Eazy. And then Nick goes, hey, man, don't be obvious, but look over your right shoulder. And it's just freaking Saquon Barkley right there.
Yeah. That was a night. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Time has flown, my friend.
5 years ago and about a month before the world shut down.
Super Bowl was played this week. As everybody knows, the Eagles dominated defensively. Probably the most defensively dominant performance I've ever seen in a game I attended live. I picked the Eagles. I felt like they were the better team. I think we all picked the Eagles on the show.
I picked the Chiefs.
You picked the Chiefs. Way to go. Way to go. Failhorn goes here.
I felt like they were Thanos. They were, snaps fingers, inevitable, man. It's just that's the black magic of the Chiefs.
I feel like we all overlooked their biggest weakness, which proved to be their downfall, which is their offensive line. And that's what killed them in that game. But, man, what an environment. First, to see a team just win so convincingly. Every Super Bowl I've been to has been close. This one was not. And you saw Kendrick Lamar at halftime. There was all kinds of things. I have to cough. Hopefully they didn't make it through the recording.
It 100% did.
Oh, God. Just don't make me laugh.
Nick is struggling through it.
Yeah.
Nick is struggling through it.
It was a hell of a time, though.
Nick, I do have a question for you. Were you one of the 61,000 in attendance that shouted, "A minor"?
Yeah, of course. I was taking a video.
Good boy.
And I'm like trying to not go along with the words because I'm taking a video on my phone. And I had prime seats. Basically the front row upper deck right behind the network cameras, 50-yard line. Like, perfect. I didn't even watch the replay because every time I see a highlight from the game, I'm like, oh, well, I remember that from my brain because I saw it from that exact perspective.
I just pulled that out from my brain, drawer.
Yeah, like there's the whole Josh Sweat sack, and then there's the Jalix Hunt sack, and I remember Sweat doing the Sweat celebration, and I was just like, yeah, I remember seeing that live. But yeah, when Kendrick was on it, the thing is it was a performance that looked better on TV than I think in person. It wasn't as electric as some of the past ones. But when I watched the TV copy afterward, I was like, oh, this was awesome.
It was great.
I enjoyed it, but we didn't get the bangers that you might expect from like Good Kid, Mad City, but you still got a lot of hits. But man, on TV, it was incredible. And the A minor, that was the best part of the whole show, of course. And people are like, oh, they pumped in noise. Like that one streamer, Kai Sanat, was like, they pumped in that crowd noise, man. They weren't that loud. It's like, well, first off, that always kind of happens in those scenarios. But in that moment specifically, that was real. I was there. I heard it. It's on my recording on my phone. And it was a great show. The game, not so much. But you know what? If you like defense and if you appreciate football for what it is, then you appreciated that game. Just a dominant performance. Also, Sean, Super Bowl background stories. Before the game every year, I have a ritual. First off, I got there 6.5 hours before kickoff. Got there at like 11. And I get there so early that they're still testing the speakers. And there's nobody in the stands. And me and my colleague Kevin Patra, what we always do is we take a lap around the stadium and we go sit in the last row of the stadium and just chill for like 10 minutes. So we did that. I went and found like where the water was so I could stock up on water. And then we always go down to the field. And I had to write up some news in between. So we go down to the field. And I find my way down this elevator that's near where we're sitting. We're like, all right, this is cool. We have our path there. we go down there. We start seeing people we work with. We see people that we know from the business. We could run into somebody else who used to work in the newsroom, works as a Fox researcher now. He's doing research for Terry Bradshaw and Fox's pregame show, and we go over and say hi to him. We're taking pictures of players. We're taking videos, just getting the lay of the land. We go to get off the field. We're in like the bowels of the stadium walking toward our tunnel. Actually, no, we're on the field. We're walking toward our tunnel, and all of a sudden security stops us. They're like, this entrance is blocked. And I was like, why? We just came through here. And they're like, it's going to be cut off for a while. And we had heard rumblings that Trump was going to be there and that he was going to come out in glad hand. And so we go out another tunnel and we try to go through the service level back to where we were, and they cut us off again. They're like, yeah, Trump's here. And I was like, I'm going to get as far away from this scenario as possible. So let me go find another elevator and get the hell off field level. And sure enough, he came out in glad handed. So that was a bit of an interruption. But otherwise, once you got back to the seat and the game started, 5 Super Bowls, Sean, 5 emotional moments for me. It's never going to not happen. It's always right around the anthem, and it's after the teams get introduced, and it's like right around the anthem where they all line up, and it starts, and I just do the sway as a former player and everything else, and I just think about like the journey here.
It is a moment of reflection. It's a moment of zen. It's something different because it means something, of course, to the players and the coaches. You saw the video of Nick Sirianni crying when Chris Stapleton sang the national anthem a couple of years ago. But I remember that feeling in Miami. I remember I wanted to see the flashbulbs going off at the kickoff. I wanted that moment, and I didn't have it on my phone or anything. I don't have it. It's in my memory. And I'm standing in a corridor that leads out. This was at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. So I'm like standing in like a corridor. And I asked the usher, I'm like, hey, man, I'm media. I was like, I'm just going to stand here and watch the national anthem and the kickoff. Is that cool? And he was like, you got a press pass, man. I don't care what you do. I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Because I know like sometimes they're like, hey, no standing, no standing. And I've even flashed the press pass before, and they're like, I don't care. Like, get out of here. I'm like, all right. Yeah. But I checked him. He's like, yeah, man, it's cool. And I watched the national anthem, and all I could think of that entire time was my grandfather. Career military, but he also was the one that taught me about football. Okay, he was the one that gave me bedtime stories about the Immaculate Reception and Terry Bradshaw as a kid growing up in Pittsburgh. And so in that moment, all I could think about was John Thomas Kane. And you're right, it's emotional, and I'm getting goosebumps now even thinking about it. But yeah, I shed a tear, and I'm just like, it wasn't because I was sad or anything else. It was just such a powerful emotion, and it's like, dang. This is why we love sports so much, because it can invoke such passion and emotions and take you back to that one moment where it all started, and it's like it's come full circle. Yeah,
I always think about sitting in the basement of my dad's house or at a Super Bowl party with my dad and whoever else was there and watching like Broncos Packers or like Patriots Rams or Rams Titans or whatever Super Bowl you want to pick out, and thinking like, everybody in the world's watching this, and we were all gathered to watch this game. This, Patriots, Eagles, that type of thing. I remember where I was during all those games, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, I am at the first time it was like I'm at the freaking Super Bowl, and the 5th time it was like I'm at the freaking Super Bowl.
I'm at the freaking Super Bowl. What's the first Super Bowl you remember? Is it Broncos Packers?
It's Broncos Packers. Yeah.
Same for me. I remember John Elway walking off the field. I remember that. Yeah.
I remember the helicopter hit and all that stuff. Didn't really understand the ramifications of the game that time, but. This time around, it was reflection of life in football. Growing up playing, my dad coached us playing in high school, playing in college briefly, and then transitioning to this, and really the last decade in this business, and just being like, damn, man, like all those overnights I used to work in the newsroom in LA and all this stuff, and now I've gotten to this point where, like, I get to be here and I get to sit here and take this all in, and this is the game that the whole world's watching, and I'm here. Like, it's crazy to every time. It always overwhelms me, and it's like I shed tears because I'm just so grateful for it, and I'm grateful for the journey and also for the opportunity. And the other cool thing was this week was at being a part of NFL Daily, we did shows on Radio Row all week, so it was the busiest Super Bowl of my career because I'm going to cover Eagles all week, so I'm
Nick
going to do media.
Somebody now,
and then I'm also going down to Radio Row after to do shows on our set on Radio Row. You want to talk about being a somebody, Sean? I got car service from Radio Row back to the hotel a couple times. I was like, yo, they have a car waiting for us? This is awesome. And it was a great week. I did interviews with, Jonathan Taylor and with Greg Olson, and Freaking Joey Chestnut, which I have a story that I can't tell you on the show, but I'll tell you off the show.
Tell it.
I can't. I cannot. I will get sued for defamation, even though it's true. Every time I'm just like,
my brother, Kendrick Lamar, just called Drake a pedophile on international TV.
He didn't use the term.
He didn't, but we all knew it.
I'm telling you, when I tell you the story later, you're gonna know why.
Can I just say the amount of times I had to not just defend that halftime show, but explain it to people that I work with. I'm like, all right, so you know Kendrick, you know who Drake is? Yeah, okay. Well, they had a rap beef and like so and so and so and so and so on.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then
I had to explain it to my mom. She's like, everyone was saying mean things about that guy, and I just wanted to go watch it. And I tried. I didn't understand a word he said. I'm like, all right, Mom. I was like, it's okay. It's not for you. It's not for you, Kathy.
Did you tell them they've aged out of the Super Bowl halftime experience?
I was like,
now?
Mom. I was like, no offense. I was like, it's not for you.
Get out of here, Rolling Stones.
I was like, it's not for you. I was like, you're not supposed to get it, but that's okay.
Get out of here, Maroon
and she was
5.
She was like, I know.
Oh no! Yeah. Hopefully I don't cough again. Yeah, 70% of white America was irritated by Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, it's not for you. Okay, this is our generation now. We're in charge. We're picking the halftime shows. Damn it!
Look at me. I'm the captain now.
I do the
halftime show now.
But yeah, it was a great week, man. I went to the Madden party on Friday. I saw Shabuzi, Jelly Roll, and Chris Stapleton. Shout out to my people at EA who hooked me up with some invitations to that. That's always a fun time. Yeah, it was. I didn't go to a lot of parties, but I went to the ones that mattered to me and worked my ass off. And maybe that's why I got sick. But what a blast! But also, Sean, I got to tell you, game ends, right? Do the podcast, go back to the hotel, starving. Nothing is open, strangely. DoorDash Taco Bell, and at that point, I am really feeling sick. I ate like a third of what I ordered. I left the rest of it behind because I just felt so gross.
And then the second time where you've ordered Taco Bell and just left it there.
I ate the rest of that in the following days. This time I did not.
The last time I visited you in Cleveland. I get Taco Bell, and Nick's like, that's not enough. Need to order more.
One thing each.
I was
like, DoorDash, you got to go ball out.
So I ordered DoorDash again. This time it took like another hour. I'm falling asleep on the couch. Finally gets here. Finally eat it. Doesn't eat a thing. He's asleep upstairs.
Nah. There were other things to attend to. I'll tell you this. The journey back was hell. My flight was delayed by 2 hours. I had full chills and sweats. Fell asleep on the plane the whole ride to Houston. Fell asleep the whole ride from Houston to Cleveland. Woke up 20 minutes before landing, just in full chills and shivers. Tried to go find something to eat because I hadn't really eaten anything all day. Got a Chick-fil-A sandwich, barely ate that. Got in the Uber, got home, just laid on the couch. Slept on the couch from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. It was rough, and then the next week was pretty rough. But overall, hell of a Super Bowl experience. New Orleans is cool, man. I don't know if you've ever been, but big fan of the city. A lot of culture. Kind of a dirty city, but in an endearing way. And very walkable, and which was nice because I didn't have to worry about shuttles to the Super Bowl during the game or on opening night. And overall, nothing but positive things to say about the experience. Again, very grateful for it. And I know America wasn't happy with the game, but I feel like the better team won. So that's that.
I have been to New Orleans once back in college for the College Media Association Awards. I didn't win. That was the year.
I remember that.
That was the year before. We both won. We got what did we get? Best sportscast in the country? Something like that?
Best college sportscast in the country, baby.
Last award I've ever won. And
Same.
And then, it was Bourbon Street was awesome. I like New Orleans. It is funny because, like, you go outside of New Orleans, you go outside of, like, the downtown area, and you're still like, But then, like, driving in, and this was back in 2013, so, pretty far removed from Katrina, almost a decade removed from Katrina, and I still saw, like, houses on their side. I'm like, is this normal? They're like,
yeah.
We fixed the French Quarter and we fixed downtown. I'm like, okay, then.
Yeah. Speaking of which, after they had that terrorist attack in January, security was at an all-time high.
I bet.
People with, military men with AR-15s just walking up and down Bourbon. They had, like, queues to get in and off the street. Like, it was pretty nuts. But appreciate that, increase security to make sure everything was safe. Went off without a hitch. Didn't get the vibe that I got in Vegas the year before when I was out on the strip with Katie on Saturday night, which is I could see a shooting happening. That definitely never got that vibe in New Orleans. And dude, the people there are so freaking nice. Oh my god, I felt like I was back in the Midwest. Every car I got in, like that was an Uber driver, was just talkative as hell. Even when I was sick, I was like, ugh, I don't want to talk, but this guy's just talking my ear off. Super nice people. Couldn't say anything but good things about the city. It was
all
a
I've
great
heard.
Super Bowl host.
That's all I've heard about New Orleans. Good job. Claps to them. It's awesome. Not easier to get around than Miami when you had to.
Not stuck on the causeway all day. Yeah.
Last question I got for you, Nick, is this was a blowout, and you've said most of the Super Bowls you've been to have been close, but like we do get the occasional Super Bowl blowout. You can go back to like Super Bowl 55 here in Tampa, Bucks Chiefs, obviously Eagles Chiefs. You've got Broncos Seahawks. Like, how do we get all the way to the end of this and have like the two best teams, and then somehow one blows the other out? Like, how does that happen?
This is why. Right here. Rosters.
I was going to say,
I'm
for
holding
our audio listeners, Nick is showing me the Super Bowl rosters.
Yeah, the roster card that they give you at every game that you cover. They print it in color for the Super Bowl because it's a fancy day. That's why they had the superior team. They drafted well. There's a big difference between the Eagles of 2 years ago and the Eagles this year, which was their defensive line wasn't littered with veteran guys. It was all young guys. They swarmed the ball really well. They had athletes at every level of the defense, and their defense was so good that it gave their offense a leg up because they had great field position. They capitalized on turnovers. The Eagles just had to avoid making big mistakes. They turned the ball over once. Saquon didn't even have a big game, and Jalen Hurts played well enough. Jalen Hurts was an MVP where it's like, was he? But the defense is so good at so many different levels and with different players that you couldn't pick one. I thought DeJean had an outside shot at getting it, and then Hurts threw a couple touchdown passes, and I was like, it's going to go to him. I mean, he played well. He played like he should in that offense, and they just had the better team, superior roster.
Exciting whites, man. Exciting whites.
Exciting whites.
That, I think, wraps it up on Super Bowl 59. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, here on the episode 63, the George Russell episode. No better time than to do what, Sean?
Shift gears. In 1 second. I did want to say, something we are going to start doing is, because the Eagles are hanging a banner of their own, we here at the Gridiron Podcast are going to come up with 32 banners, or I guess 31 banners that other teams are going to hang this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
If you have any suggestions on what your team's banner should say, or what someone else's team banner should say, get as wacky as you want, and you might just see it here on the Gridiron Podcast. You can email those suggestions to us at the Gridiron Podcast 3. That's the Gridiron Podcast number 3. Damn those other two at gmail.com. Again, the Gridiron Podcast 3 at gmail.com. And if I haven't explained myself well enough, again, we're making banners for teams that did not win the Super Bowl. They're going to say wacky things on them. Give us suggestions. Now we can shift gears, Nick, to Formula One.
Also, you can follow us on Instagram at
we're on Instagram
Gridiron
now.
Pod.
Yeah, follow us on Insta at Gridiron Pod. Are we on anywhere else, Nick? I don't keep up with all the socials.
We're all individually on Twitter.
I'm literally like the worst reporter, like TV reporter ever at socials. I don't think I've touched my Facebook in years. I'm usually on Twitter and Instagram, and sometimes on TikTok.
I used to be very active on Twitter back when Twitter was a nice place to be. It's not anymore. But that's not why I'm not active on it. I'm just not active on it because I just don't have the desire within me to engage in discussions. Not discourse, but just discussions. I
will tell you a fun aside before we go into F1. Last night, I'm anchoring our 6 o'clock sportscast, and our meteorologist, been doing this for 40 years, right? Just he's been here forever. The voice you listen to when there's a hurricane barreling towards Florida and all this and that. And he's like, there's a trough coming over the Gulf of Mexico. And I literally just like look at him and like point at him. He said it. He said Gulf of Mexico. And immediately, I'm just like, all of us in the studio are like, we're going to get so many emails about this. The weather segment ends. He's walking off. He's like, I know. He comes back at 10 o'clock. He goes, I got 2 emails. I was like, really? Only 2? He's
already?
like, yes. Well, from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. I was like, really? Only 2 emails? He goes, yes. And they were both very polite, actually. They were actually very cordial and polite, but corrected me. He's like, I don't care what it's called. He's like, it's the Gulf. So the more you know.
You know what? I stand by him. A, old habits die hard. B, it's dumb. The renaming of it is dumb.
Again, how long did it take me to stop calling the Chargers San Diego Chargers or the Washington football team the Washington Redskins? Like things, or I still say the Cleveland Indians. I love the name the Guardians, but like it just rolls off the tongue because I said Cleveland Indians for 29 years of my life. Like, it is what it is.
Yep. It took me a while.
Doesn't make you any more right or wrong.
Guardians is forced for me.
Exactly. It is a forced thing. Anyway, let's force this conversation over to the world of F1, because for the first time ever, normally in the offseason, as we build up to a new season as we are now, each team individually holds events where they announce their driver lineup and have their liveries revealed. If you're new here, liveries is paint scheme. Think like the M&M's car or the DuPont car in NASCAR. These are just the car's colors and stuff like that. So, but for the first time ever, F1 was like, no, we're not doing this all individually. We're going to do it all at the same time, and we are going to throw a massive party. Think like NFL honors type thing. They threw it at the O2 Arena in London, and they had, for the first time ever, all 10 teams debuting their liveries in something that they called F1 75, because they're celebrating the 75th anniversary. It was streamed live. It was free. They packed that thing. They sold tickets to fans. And honestly, I thought it was a cool thing. I don't know what your thoughts are, Nick, but like watching that, I thought it was going to be really cheesy and really stupid, because at the end of the day, like all these livery reveals usually are just pretty dull. Like normally the car looks the same as it did the year before, with maybe a different sponsor, maybe a slightly different shade of papaya or green or pink, and it's just like, it's the same car that I saw last year. Like, what's the difference? Like, there's no difference. This is stupid. It's a big bowl of nothing. And F1 turned 10 big bowls of nothing into one bowl of something, at least.
They took after the NFL.
They did.
The NFL has made everything into a tentpole event, including schedule release. And it seemed like F1 was like, yeah, let's make this into a tentpole event. And they sold out an arena, and it went over pretty well. Steak, Sour, Kick, whatever else is in their name. They had Thames come out, the singer, and like sing as they were rolling it out. Like the reveals were very cool. I think Red Bull had a bunch of people dancing, which was kind of weird, but like it was cool.
Sauber had a drum line too, man.
Yeah.
Like
so
it was pretty cool. I will say the biggest letdown was when McLaren came out there, and they did it in reverse order of the grid. So Sauber finished last in the previous season, so they came out first and debuted their car, which admittedly looks pretty damn sexy. You know, lime green front that transforms into a gradient black.
Do we want to share pictures?
Rear. Yeah, go for it, man. Start finding them. I'll riff while you do that.
Right.
But towards the end of it, McLaren, the Constructors' Champions from last year, there's the Stake F1 team Kick Sauber car. Again, last year, all of these cars, they didn't know how to deal with the weight, so they all were black, basically, with hints of color on them, because it's just black carbon fiber is lighter than putting paint on your car. And from like a front view, when all those cars were coming down like the front straight, they all looked the same, aside from like Red Bull and I guess Ferrari, yeah. But I like that teams are like, yeah, we need to put some color back on the grid. That looks awesome. From a front view, that looks amazing. The top of the car is lime green, neon green, whatever you want to call it, and the back is black. It's sexy. I love it.
Yeah, I thought that this was a real tasty adjustment to what they'd done with their livery last year. Is in their first year as Stake, Kick, F1, Sauber, whatever, however it's said in order.
Too many things. Again, though, I think the dullest moment was when McLaren came out there and they had all of their championship-winning cars, because they were building this up as this is our championship contending car. We are going for the title this year. Lando is going to win the title. Oscar's going to win. Like, they're building this up, and they had the car from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And then I'm like, ooh, they might. And then if you didn't catch this, the lower thirds, like what you see on your screen right now, for Andrea Stella and for Zach Brown, they had a tint of red in it.
Yeah.
Like the old 80s car. I'm like, oh my God. They're about to like debut like a throwback. Nope, it's the same one from last year. It's literally the same exact looking car.
Same one.
It's the
same one.
It's the same paint scheme. They're like, you know what? Not changing it any. Screw
Looks good,
that.
But
hey, look,
it's
it
the
is
exact same thing.
Yeah, it's a good looking car, but it was kind of like, hey, here's where we are. Here's where we're coming. It's the same car. All right, cool, whatever. I will say, winners for best reveal, I'm going with Visa Cash App Racing Bulls.
Oh, the prettiest livery on the grid.
They said that V-Carb, formerly, what was it, AlphaTauri, formerly Toro Rosso, that they were going to be running basically last year's Red Bull car. They meant it because they literally took the car, painted it white, but left that Red Bull logo on the front nose, that Red Bull yellow circle on the front nose and on the back. They're like, yeah, we're not even going to hide it anymore. We are Red Bull's junior team, and here's our car.
I love that they...
It's sexy.
Yeah, I love that they leaned into that too.
People need to understand. Like, the Indianapolis Colts figured this out decades ago. White is a color scheme. Like Penn State, the whiteout. The Indianapolis Colts, that livery, the white V-carb, which is no longer Visa Cash App RB Formula One team. It's Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. They beat that into us.
Oh, they changed it. They made it Racing Bulls instead of RB?
Yes, they literally beat that into us during their like intro. They're like, we are now Visa Cash App Racing Bulls.
Good.
But they're embracing the V-carb like denonym too. They're like, yeah, we're V-carb, but it's Racing Bulls, not RB. Like, all right, whatever, man.
Because Visa Cash App RB sucked, but Racing Bulls is cool.
The logo's the same. But that livery, the white, I love it. Best reveal, and it's the biggest change from last year. And you know what? The V-carb car from last year was also probably the best livery on the grid. Like, it's great. It's great.
I'm going to find another one of it real quick because it was too good. Like I got people sending me like pictures of it, and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, oh my God, that's incredible. That's fantastic.
For the V-carb one?
Yes.
The other one that I liked was, sorry, what are you bringing up, the V-carb?
Yeah, I'm trying to get more views of it.
I'll just say, the other one that I liked is Haas. They kind of embraced, because all of the teams, they rolled out, like an intro video, and then they would roll out the car onto the stage, and they'd like elevate it so you can get a good look at it. Haas, they didn't really change much. But the Haas Formula One car looks like, I don't know how else to explain. It looks like a race car. It looks like a NASCAR or an Indy car. It looks American, and I love it. Yeah, the V-carbs look great. That might be the best livery on the grid.
You want to talk about Haas? Here's Haas here.
Sure.
Again,
it's nothing special, but like it just looks. It looks like a race car.
Yeah, it does. Like the black and the red. I mean, two classic racing colors. They got the red on the front wing. They got the red on the rear wing. They got the black over the middle with the white in between. It looks more like Haas should look.
Yes, like it looks like a NASCAR almost. It looks kind of like an Indy car. Like it looks like it should have more sponsors and doesn't, but it looks very good. Yeah, it looks racy. That's all I can say. Because race cars look weird sometimes. They've got like sponsors, but they're trying to match the sponsors with like the color that they put on the car. Haas pulled it off great. Red Bull didn't change their car. You know what?
Who else didn't? You know who else didn't change their car, Sean?
Red Bull.
Take another guess.
Ferrari. No, they changed their car.
No, they changed their car. Williams. They're essentially the same thing.
Here's our car. It's blue.
It's blue with a Duracell battery on the back.
Yeah, it's blue. It's blue.
That's a good reason for you to watch this on YouTube, of course. You can always like and subscribe on YouTube. @GridironPod. YouTube.com/@GridironPod. Where you can find us and check out all these visuals that we're talking about if you're listening to the podcast.
You know who my biggest loser for new liveries is, though?
Who?
Ferrari.
Yes, and let's talk about it because, you're red, not blue.
Can you guess why? Yes, thank you. That is a beautiful shade of red, by the way. The blood red. It's
beautiful.
It's not bright red anymore. It's that blood
like
red.
It's like Cabernet.
Yes, exactly. That's what Ferrari is supposed to be. And I love how they have white on the wing, and I love how they have white on the exhaust and the back of the car too, because like Ferrari has used white before in their color schemes. And I can't fault them for, going after money. But does the HP logo have to be blue?
Yeah,
does
that's
it
the
have
thing.
to be blue?
And like, so we got teased. They had a livery last year where they wore blue suits with the HP logo on it for like a race, and there was like splashes of blue on it. It just clashes because Ferrari's red, and I know why they use the white to like balance it out to then throw the HP logo on there, but it feels forced. Like the white on its own there is fine, but with the HP logo, it feels like, hey, we signed a big sponsor. Let's slap this on the car to get our money.
It's the blue HP. Like someone from Ferrari's got to be like, hey, HP, we'll take your money, but here's the deal: we're Ferrari. We're not putting blue on our car. Someone needs to be like, protect the brand, protect the shield. Enzo is rolling over in his grave like there's blue on a red car. It's terrible. Where it doesn't belong.
You know what wasn't terrible was the Lewis Hamilton walkout in that Ferrari racing suit.
Looking at Lewis Hamilton in a red fire suit. Oh man,
what a moment! What a moment. Other liveries. We got Mercedes, looks largely the same.
You know who I also kind of appreciate what they did? Alpine.
Why? Because
they added more color to the car this year. Last year, the car was like mostly black, and people blasted them for it. And they're like, fine, pink, more blue. Great. You're a French team. I don't like pink on the car, but your main sponsor's logo is pink, so I get it. But at the same time, like, oh, man, I miss that old Alpine car that was the French tree color. It was just so great. But yes, look at this car. It's blue, it's pink for the sponsor, blue because it's the color of France. That's beautiful. Mwah.
I appreciate those who work at BWT for forcing pink onto every car that they show up on. They did it with Aston Martin. They've done it with Alpine. They did it with Racing Point. The whole car was basically pink and white. I love how they just like,
look. If you're going to paint your car pink, paint it pink. I don't care.
They shoehorn that into the negotiations. They're like, look, we'll pay you a lot of money, but you got to have splashes of pink. Our logo has to be pink, even if it's in blue with a pink background on other parts of the car. We got to have more pink, which is fine because you talked about the weight limits and taking the paint off and just exposing carbon fiber and most of the cars being black. This, like, there's a lot of color, as they were one of the cars with the most black on their car last year. So mixing up the color, I agree. And the pink pops. It definitely pops. Hopefully they can drive well, though, because...
I think what it was, too, is cars figured out last season that the key to unlocking this kind of rule formula set wasn't so much weight as it was aerodynamics.
Right.
Which is what McLaren figured out, and that's why they went from, last place all the way up to first, is they figured out, hey, aerodynamics are the keys to this, new rule set, which is going to change next year, of course. So it's like, oh, it's not a weight problem, it's an aerodynamics problem. Well, shoot, let's paint this sucker whatever we want. We are getting color this year, which is cool for the sport because, it's visually appealing, but also, like, that's what Formula One used to look like, right? Cars used to represent the nationalities of the teams that were entering them. So it's really cool. I like it.
Yep. Another one, Aston Martin. I think they did a decent job. I don't know if there's much of a change here. There seems to be a little bit more black on the bottom, but it's balanced well. And I think that lime green, whatever color you might want to call that.
British Racing Green.
That lime green is racing green.
Oh, the lime? Where's the lime? I'm not seeing it.
There's like a lime line between the black and the racing green. And
okay.
It's a good separator. It's also on their wheel covers, like their hubcaps or whatever you might want to call them.
I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's a nice little pop. It's kind of like the Seahawks uniforms. Like they get like action green in there, and it just like pops in small amounts. Very tasteful livery. Hopefully they have a better car as well because that's a good looking car and it would look good at the front of the grid for sure. It's not a lot of changes, but I think the changes that were subtle were pretty tasty in my opinion.
What was your favorite part of F175?
Frankly, I didn't watch a lot of it live, but
Nick.
I thought the pomp and circumstance of it all was just really cool to me. I hate shows that are like, we're going to show you what you want to see coming up, but first, like that just irritates the hell out of me because they're just dragging the show out. It's like a bad awards show. But like the way that these different cars were introduced and like the big reveal of Lewis Hamilton with Charles Leclerc and like all that stuff, like that was just the spectacle of it all was very cool because that's the one thing that's kind of been missing from F1 because there's no real kickoff to the season. At least there wasn't in the past. It would just be like each team introduces their livery individually and you see it online. And then, boom, they're testing. And then, boom, it's the first race. This was like, it felt like the official start of the new F1 season where it's like, hey, here are all these cars. Here are all these drivers. This is what you're building up for this year. Testing happens right around the corner. This is the official start. I think I really like that.
So Jack Whitehall was the host of this event. If you don't know who he is, he's a British actor / comedian. He was great, honestly, because I feel like F1 at times can be so buttoned up for as open as they are, but with Drive to Survive and that stuff, like they do feel pretty buttoned up. Like right now there's a swear ban and they might not release team radios because of swearing, and you can get fined for swearing. And Jack Whitehall literally sticks a mic in Gordon Ramsay's face and goes, "What do you think about the swear ban?" Like, Jack Whitehall was employed by F1, and he's like, "What do you think about the swear ban?" Gordon Ramsay's like, "You're putting me on the spot," but... And then Gordon Ramsay, of course, who uses curse words as if he's painting, a beautiful, ceiling.
My father wove a tapestry of obscenities that still hangs somewhere over Lake Michigan.
Exactly. That's Gordon Ramsay, but in a British sense. And he swore on TV. And I'm like, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. He also took shots at Zach Brown. He's like, Zach Brown gets a tattoo every time one of his drivers wins a race, which was fine when you were bang on average. But now that you guys are actually good, you're going to wind up looking like Post Malone pretty soon. And then he went to break and he said, and we're going to talk to Zach Brown later, and he's going to hide his tramp stamp of the Constructors' Trophy. And I was dying. He was taking shots at Toto. He was taking shots at George, at Max. He was like the most handsome man in the world, Charles Leclerc, the man my fiance imagines when we make love, and the man I imagine when we make love. And Charles just on camera, like, face totally red. I was like, this is perfect. This is wonderful. This is what not the sport needed, but like what the fans deserved.
A little bit of levity to a sport that is a little too buttoned up at times.
And I know they did it because it's the 75th anniversary of Formula One, but like they should do this every year because it wasn't like it was like some gigantic hit, but it entertained me, which is something that these livery reveals never do, and it entertained me. I liked it. And
in the words of George Russell, yabba dabba doo.
Yabba dabba doo. Oh, kerfuffle. And you know what? They kept it brief. They brought the car out. They asked like one driver each question. They asked the team principal one question, and then off they went. I was like, this is perfect. It's moving. It has a nice pace. It has a nice tempo to it.
Didn't even need an orchestra to play off.
Oh, kerfuffle.
Oh, Toto, I'm staying in Vegas. George, let's get the drink in Los Angeles.
Oh, Toto, I'm staying in Las Vegas.
Hey, at least they embrace America. This felt very, not Americanized, but felt like it catered to the worldwide audience, which I think is important as F1 continues to grow because they race all over the world. People tune in from all over the world. But there was no unifying event that really brought everybody together in celebration of the sport quite like this. I would not be surprised if they do this again next year. They're going to have to rename it. Can't be F1 76. Well, I guess it could be. If you think about it. I mean, Super Bowl
is F1
still
Live or something
Roman
like
numerals.
That. Yeah,
F1
they'll come
kickoff.
up with something.
I don't know.
F1 kickoff. Got anything else, Nick? I think we're good.
No.
Testing starts soon.
When does testing start?
I don't know.
I think it's like next week or something like that.
IndyCar testing just wrapped up.
Shout out to Willie Bucks, baby. Friend of the pod.
Shout out Will Buxton.
Oh, Sean, how was your interview with Will Buxton?
My interview with Will Buxton was great. He was a complete gentleman, a very stand-up guy, and you can watch that coming up on Fox 13 later this week.
Oh,
shameless plug.
Baby. That is a plug right there.
Yes,
testing
sir.
starts February 26th in Bahrain.
So next week?
Yeah, next week. 1 week from today when we record on February 19th, you'll hear this pod on February 20th on most platforms unless you're watching it live. No participation from the chat tonight. Totally fine. We've been very tight with this without Katie. Not that Katie bogs us down because she does exactly the opposite.
Let's be honest. Katie bogs us down.
We didn't have much to talk about. Super Bowl's a couple weeks old. That is what it is. We're in a bit of a dead period.
This is a filler podcast, and we hope you enjoyed listening to episode 63, the George Russell episode of the Gridiron Podcast. Again, we're the Gridiron Podcast, equal parts grid, equal parts iron, equal parts Formula One, and football. For Nick Shook, I'm Sean Barie. As always, you can keep up with us on Instagram at the Gridiron Pod and on email. There we go. Nick's too late with the lower thirds. Follow us on Instagram.
I threw the email up first. It was a reminder to you.
Follow us on Instagram at Gridiron Pod, and then follow us or just email us on our email. That's the Gridiron Podcast 3. That's the Gridiron Podcast number 3 at gmail.com. We will be back next week where we are hopefully going to start our other banners segment. Again, if you have any suggestions for what your NFL team's banner should say this offseason, drop us a comment, drop us an email, or just hit us up on social media.
Also, I'm going to say one thing, Sean, not to interrupt you here, as I always do.
He always interrupts me. Always interrupts me.
Quick shout out to First Things First on Fox Sports 1 for plugging my QB index as a point for them to discuss on their show yesterday. That was cool. Also, you can check out the final QB index rankings at NFL.com/QB index. I ranked all 59 quarterbacks from the entire 2024 season, every quarterback that made a start.
Who was
showed
last?
Up in the
Nick?
rankings.
Who was last?
Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No bias at all. That's how bad he was.
We did have one note from Katie. I was supposed to read it out during the NFL segment, but she said she scored as many points as Harrison Buckner did in the Super Bowl, and that makes her happy. For the absent Katie Caldwell and Nick Shook, I'm Sean Barry. Have a great night.
Again, I got nothing.
Live life in the fast lane, everyone.
So long.